Hello, welcome back to my channel and part 2 of my voyage around the lesser known places in England. This is a video designed for those people who are coming to England as tourists or as visitors and want to get away from the usual tourist sites that are always packed and overpriced. Exhibit A being Stonehenge, one of the most beautiful, mysterious and important places in England, and it's a really boring place to visit. What they've done is they've made this sort of path around the outside of it, so you can't walk through it anymore, you can't get the full experience. They make you walk round, and then there's tons of people, and there's a huge road next to it, so all the sort of mystical experience of Stonehenge goes. Now in this video, I'm going to direct you to some other stone circles in England, which are much more atmospheric and much more beautiful. Stonehenge is so important in terms of its history. It's worth thinking about, when I went to Machu Picchu in Peru, this extraordinary, mysterious place, in the visitor centre, right, they have this sort of big chart on the wall, and it shows you all the various monuments in the world through the ages. Well, of course, Machu Picchu is from around the early 1400s. It's not that ancient. You go back to the Greek Parthenon and the pyramids, and then right back at the start almost is Stonehenge. That's how old it is. It's a hugely important historical thing for the history of mankind. There are not many other buildings. I think about in Malta and Turkey are the only other places where you can find something that's older than Stonehenge. It's incredibly old. So for that reason alone, it's worth visiting. But it's not a terrific experience. The stone circles I want to talk about in this video are a much better experience. You get a much greater feeling of the pagan ancient world. For example, Castle Rig in the Lake District. This is really interesting because Castle Rig is literally, you walk up this street, up this hill in Keswick, this town in the Lake District, you turn a corner and it's right there. And it is a full stone circle, and it's got this incredible 360-degree panorama. And it's real sort of, Lord of the Rings stuff, where you're standing in this circle and you look around and there's this panorama of hills, whereas just here is a town, a big town. It's fantastic, and it's an easy walk from Keswick town centre. It doesn't take a long time to get to, and it really is one of the most spectacular spots in England, I think. But if you're feeling a bit more adventurous and you're a good map reader and you want a challenge, in the south of the Lake District is Swinside. This is one of the most, if not the most, complete stone circle in England, yet it's one of the least visited and least known about, partly because you really have to work to find it. We had to get the map out, go down this road, turn in this little road here, then you park outside this sort of farmhouse, and then you have to walk down this road, down this footpath, and you walk and walk and walk, and then suddenly there it is, just on the side of the path. There's one little sign about it. It's next to a farm. There's loads of cows and loads of cow pats everywhere, so watch where you walk if you go to Swinside. And the cows are just milling around, mooching around amongst the stones, and it just happens to be one of the most complete stone circles in England. And what I like about Swinside is it's very down to earth. It's not very spectacular, but it is like all stone circles were supposed to be. This was part of the religion. It's supposed to be way out in nature, remote from humanity, and it's away from everything. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's a farm next to it, but essentially it's in the middle of nowhere, and you get a sense of what it was like to come to these places across the country, and the sense of their mystical relationship with the land. And again, you can do a 360-degree pan and there's barely anything. So try and find Swinside. One place I've always wanted to go and I've never made it is the Rollright Stones, which is on the border of Oxfordshire and Warwickshire. It was used as the location for the Doctor Who story, The Stones of Blood. If anyone's been there, let me know below. And is it easy to get to? I know it's free to get to, as all these stone circles are actually, apart from Stonehenge. But I'd really like to know what it's like. But another place that I, really recommend, of course, is Avebury. I'm sure many people are aware of Avebury, but if you've not been, you really should go. This, in some ways, is the most spectacular stone circle in England because it surrounds an entire village. It was the location of the TV series Children of the Stones, which regular viewers of this channel will know I love. And it's amazing. The whole village is surrounded by these huge stones going all the way around. It's spectacular. But just as spectacular in its own way, in Cornwall there is a series of stone circles that few people know about. They're on the east side of Bodmin Moor, and they're called the Hurlers. And you go up this sort of slight slope, quite high up, it's quite windy, and there are three stone circles connected to each other in one place with very small kind of chip-like stones. The local legend is that these were people who were turned to stone because they were playing hurling on a Sunday. It's a bit harsh, isn't it, really? But yes, but anyway, that's the legend behind them. But they're really quite beautiful, and they're on this very sort of bleak, windy slope. And very few people seem to go or seem to know about them. They're really spectacular. I really love the West Country, Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, where the Hurlers are. So I thought I'd tell you about some other places to visit down there. If you go to Dorset, if you're interested in ancient things, you go to the village of Cerne Abbas. Cerne Abbas is a beautiful little Dorset village. There's many very beautiful villages in Dorset. You know, it's a real sort of old English type place. And on the field next to it just happens to be a gigantic chalk figure of a man with an erection. You know, in England, which is supposed to be the most sexually repressed country in the world. And there he is with a great big donger. He's also holding a club. There's been various theories about this person, that he's actually a portrait of Hercules. But actually, when they did some testing on it, they found that they couldn't really prove that the giant had been there prior to the 1600s. And now historians believe that it's actually a cartoon of Oliver Cromwell from the time of the English Civil War. I'm not sure I buy that, actually. I think it looks like an ancient pictogram to me, which has been recovered by people. But, you know, that's one theory, is that it's a rather naughty cartoon of Oliver Cromwell. Whatever, it's well worth visiting. I think there are some days of the year when you're allowed to walk on it. I think it might be around May, the time of fertility. You might be allowed to sit on one piece of his anatomy. I'll leave you to imagine what that might be. But most of the time, I think it's actually, when I last went, it was fenced off and they were actually doing it up. Poor old Cerne Abbas giant. If you go back down now into Devon, on the north coast of Devon is a wonderful pair of villages called Linton and Lynmouth. Linton is up on the cliff, Lynmouth is down below in the estuary of the river. They are so beautiful and unspoilt. They're real joyful little English villages with some great places to stay and some great restaurants. And they're connected by one of those kind of funicular railways, a cliff railway. And there's some gorgeous coastal walks around there. I strongly recommend them. Further down the north coast now in Cornwall, you get Tintagel, which is the remains of a castle which is, you know, rumoured to be, the legend is that it is King Arthur's castle. It's a very spectacular piece of coastline. The castle itself is pretty much rubble, really. But it's a very interesting place to go. And just down from there is Port Gavern and Port Isaac, two lovely little places. Port Gavern is where they filmed Doc Martin, starring Martin Clunes. It's a gorgeous little place. Where else can I tell you about? Also, I think this is on the north coast of Devon, I think, is Clovelly. It might be Cornwall, I've forgotten. Clovelly. Now, this is one of these sort of show villages. So what they've done is they've sort of barricaded it off at the top, and you go through a kind of visitor centre. And then the village is one street, an old-style English village going down to the coast. And you can stay there. I've stayed there one night. It's a beautiful little place. Lots of lovely cats. If you like that kind of thing, over in Hampshire, I think, in the New Forest, is a village called Bucklersard. Bucklersard. And this is another show village where it's been cut off and preserved as it was. So you go through a visitor centre and it's one street and it's beautiful brick terraced buildings with a lawn in between, going down to a marina. You know, it was an old port. And you get a real sense of what these places were like, say, in the 1700s. And there's a pub there. I think you can stay there, I'm not sure. And just down the road is Bewley, where there's a famous house, which also has a motor museum, motor car museum. And of course, the New Forest is beautiful with all its, ponies running free, and there's some wild boar as well in some parts. Lovely place to go. I also wanted to tell you about further down now, if you're going right down to the edge, down to Cornwall and Land's End, is Kynance Cove, a beautiful part of the shoreline on the south part of the Cornwall coast. Highly recommend that. It's got a lovely little tea room, and you can have a nice afternoon out there. And finally, in this section of my journey around England, I'd like to tell you about the Witchcraft Museum at Boscastle, which is a little favourite of mine. Boscastle is it's a nice little village, very small village, and you walk down, following the river down to the sea, and just on this right-hand side is this tiny little house, old house, that's been converted into a museum of witchcraft. You can walk around it in about 10-15 minutes, but it's full of genuine artifacts, dollies, those dolls that people put pins in that have been found in fireplaces or behind brick walls, and severed hands in pickled jars and all sorts of things. It's a great fun thing. If you're into the occult and witchcraft like I am, it's well worth a visit. As I say, it doesn't take very long to go round. So if you're not that interested, you're not gonna you're not gonna be stuck in there for hours. It's not like the British Museum, but it's great fun, and I like to support it. I like the people who run it. So that's my journey around England. If you know these places and I've got anything to tell me about them, please let me know below in the comments, and I'll be back next time to tell you about some stately homes that you may not have visited.